Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So in this video I'll be doing a review and a testing of my new recently purchased XL job site table saw. Here is the box that it came in. XL job site table saw to 20 to 240 volts. So the input power 1500 watts and the load speed is there and the cutting height. So the box, quite lightweight, thin cardboard, doesn't offer too much protection, but it was packed with plenty of polystyrene, so in my case it came unharmed. There's a few little holes there. You can see it's not the thickest card, but in my case it was absolutely fine. So here it is, all the pieces are on, and first impressions. I paid £128 for this table saw, so bearing that in mind and looking at cheap entry-level table saws, first impression of this one is very good. It has a nice look to it. It kind of looks professional. Of course it's a cheaper table saw, so it's not a professional grade of saw, but it looks the part. It's got the sort of tubular design, kind of like a DeWalt job site, with these feet here to stabilize it, and it's quite lightweight. I think it's 14 or 14.5 kilos, so that's very light. That was one of the reasons why I bought it. It's got a carry handle on the side, I'll show you that in a moment. So why I bought this saw, for that kind of price range, this seemed to look like the best option. So it's got two tracks on it either side. It's got one here, one over here, and some of the really cheap saws don't have two T tracks, they only have one. So in future I can make a sled, a crosscut sled for this. It gives me the option. And another reason was that it has the fence here. It attaches on both ends. I'll show you that in a minute too. But most fences on cheap saws, they're either little knobs that you screw on manually like my old table saw, or they only attach at the front, so the back kind of tends to go outwards as you push, which of course it's not a problem for some people, but it would be better to have a fence that attaches at both ends. So it has that and an extension table that slides out quite a nice way. It's another good feature, and it looks pretty good too. So for the money I thought it was very attractive. So now we'll take a closer look at it. Here is the front of the machine. So it has, starting off over here, you have the on and off switch. So this one doesn't have a safety switch that comes down that you can hit with your knee or knock. So no safety switch over the top, but nice on and off switch. Seems okay. And it's got the rubberized, well, they're not rubberized, they're plastic, but these feet, support feet, on both sides. I think they look quite cool. And the rubber, the aluminium, I think it's aluminium bar construction. It might be steel, I'm not sure, but it feels quite rigid, quite good. And there's a little opening here for the push stick. This comes with the unit. So when you first get it, mine was a little bit stiff to push in. I thought something was stopping it, but it's just because it's new, I think. Here is the push stick, simple basic push stick, and it's nicely at hand, especially if you're right-handed. It's on the right side of the machine, and you can just grab it there. So you have this knob here that pulls out, and that releases the sliding fence. I'll show you that in a moment when I go to the top. Push that back in and it locks it. There's a rule here, 0 to 45 degrees to tilt the blade. So you can unlock, once you unlock this, it will then allow you to adjust the blade. So you have the wheel which slides the blade up and down. I'll also show that in a sec. And that is about it for the front end. So here over at the right side, there's not much to talk about here. It has these handles so you can pick it up and lift it. They're not rubbery, they're more plasticky. and here there's a handle, so you can tilt the saw on its side, lift it up and carry it. Another good feature, because I don't have my saw permanently set up, so I like to put it away and then get it out on a sunny day and put it in the garden and use it, or put it on the table, but then I like to tuck it away again. So that's another reason why I bought this saw, being 14 to 15 kilos. I was looking at an entry-level Bosch table saw, but I think it weighs around 22 kilos. So the extra weight for me, and it's over twice the price as well, so that kind of put me off a little bit. If I had it permanently set up, I'd probably go for something like that. And that is about all there is on this side to talk about. Here we are over at the left side of the table. Again, there's another handle here to carry it, and then you have these two hooks down here to wrap the cable around to keep it all neat and tidy. Here we are at the top of the table saw. First impressions of the table, very good. I thought it might be kind of a pressed steel, but it's actually like a moulded, I think an aluminium, and it feels nice. It has this paint dark grey cover on it. That might come off over time, but I'm not really bothered about that. It looks cool for the moment. So getting on to the Mitre Gauge then. General size of the Mitre Gauge, you can see it's quite big. You'll all be interested to know how much slack there is here, so I'm going to show you now. Yeah, there's a little bit of slack in this, but I don't think there's any more slack in it than any other saw that I've ever used. It's not perfect, but if you hold the gauge to one side and push, it will stay in position, or if you hold it to the other side and push, it should stay in position. So it's fine. You can adjust it at the top. The knob at the top is only plastic, and the main gauge, but then again, that's okay. It feels strong enough. Has a nice aluminium piece here to guide your wood, and that's held with a couple of wing nuts. So not too bad. So here is the blade guard. It's a frosted clear plastic, and it has this handy little lip here, so you can lift it up without being anywhere near the blade, which is a nice little feature. It feels loose and flimsy, but I guess that's so that it can just easily move around. My previous one was kind of stiff, but that only had a wing nut and a bolt, so I was probably just tightening it up too much. This one has a bolt that tightens to a point and then it won't go anymore, so you know that you've got it the right tension. Here is the blade. I'll just raise the blade with the wheel at the bottom, and the wheel at the bottom is very smooth, and you can see as it goes up, the back kind of lifts up and the front stays down. That's at maximum height. There's the blade at maximum height. And the riving knife was very simple to put on, and it also comes with this dust extraction port here, which I don't have dust extraction at the moment, so I won't be using it, but you have the port which detaches if you need one. Here's a closer look at the blade. It comes with a 24 tooth blade, which is fine, but I prefer a kind of like a 48 tooth blade, a bit of a finer blade. It will do for now, but I'll be upgrading this blade. And there's the riving knife. That attaches with, there's a plate inside it, so you can attach it by just removing the insert here, and there's one bolt, comes off, and then it just slots in, and there's a plate that connects it, so there's no need to fiddle about with it to get it parallel with the blade, because there is no adjustment. So you just put the nut in and the plate, tighten it up, and it's all set up for you. .24 tooth, (210mm), 30mm bore, and 2.8mm thickness. Looking at the insert has a little a little twist here, piece of metal underneath that holds it in. So you turn that with a flathead screwdriver and then it comes out. It is made of plastic and it's kind of a bit flimsy, but it's fine. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's okay. You could always make your own zero clearance if you wanted to. Pretty standard kind of stuff. Nothing really negative to say there. Let's take a look at the fence. So it has a knob here at the front to release it. I've got it locked in position now. The knob at the front there is plastic, although if it did break, you can see there's two screws here, so you could kind of make your own handle in the future if needed, but it might not break, so it might not be a problem. The rest of it is made of aluminium, and it feels, I've got it locked in place now, and you can see it doesn't move. It doesn't move at all. There's no movement in it, so it's good. And then it's got a little gauge in here which shows you where you're at. I'm probably not going to rely on this gauge completely because I'm not sure how accurate it is. I'm probably going to measure up anyway every time I set the fence, just because it is a cheap saw and I don't expect this rule to be perfectly accurate, even though it might be. So here is the release mechanism. So it slides okay, but it kind of judders a bit. If you see, it can judder. It's okay at the moment, but you can see there's movement in the bottom back and forth like that. So you can see it doesn't move completely straight. Say like a rack and pinion setup might move completely uniform. This one, you can see if I put it to this line here, it's slightly out at the top, and then you can pull it in and it's straight. So it's kind of a semi-manual setup. You've got to check it. I'm going to be checking it every time I set it up anyway with a ruler, just to make sure it's all straight. But the main thing is that when you lock it down, you don't have to screw screws in, and it locks down nice and solid. So that is good, and that is kind of rare on cheap saws, so I'm happy about that. And it also comes with this attachment here. This is just made of plastic, which I was quite surprised about. I've never had a plastic one before. They're usually aluminium. And then you can put this on here, and it comes with these two bolts. You can attach that so that you can cut very slim pieces of wood in here. I've took that off for now. I probably won't be using that very often. I'll just show you how this slides. So release the mechanism and the knob at the bottom. It's quite stiff at the moment. I think that's because it's new. So there's a bit of play in it, a little bit, but it feels quite sturdy. Not a problem there. And then slides back in. Another thing to note is that when you push it back in, of course, because this isn't a really expensive saw, you push it in, it's kind of tight here, and it's not so tight up that end. So you need to kind of push it in the middle and at the top before you push the lever back to lock it in place, to make sure it's all straight. So finally, another thing that it has is these two spanners here that you can connect to the machine, and they come attached like that. So there's a wing nut so you can remove them, and you need these two spanners to replace the blade, so they're always on the machine. I'll probably take them off to kind of save a bit of weight and just put them in a box, but you can keep them on the machine like that. Here's a closer look at the sliding rule. You can see the little red line. I'll move that. So the wheel has a nice smooth action. You can see it's very smooth. My old saw was a little bit stiff, which I didn't mind, but this is nice and smooth. The gears, if you're wondering, are plastic, but I'm sure they're fine. As long as they last 2 or 3 years, I'll be happy. So one thing I'm concerned about is kind of this knob here and the other knob that secures the sliding fence. They're fine, but I'm just worried that one day they might snap. They probably won't, but if they did snap, they'd be a little bit difficult to sort of make a makeshift knob for. You can see what I mean here. You can see the pressure, but they're probably fine. I'm just trying to look at any think I can criticise, but it's very difficult at this price point to criticise this saw. Here is the back of the saw. The blade and everything is in here. Here's the motor, and all the sawdust will go down. If it's not sucked up through the top, it will come out here. That's quite good. Looks quite easy to clean under here. There's not too much going on. Nice and simple. I'm sure many of you are wondering, is the blade square out of the box? So I'm just going to show you now. And I would say, yes, it is. Mine is anyway. That looks pretty square. If you check it against the teeth at the top, it'll put it out slightly. But if you make sure you're not touching any of the teeth, and then push it up nice and tight, you can see that that's square. That's not bad at all. So luckily, yes, mine does seem to be nice and square. If it is out at all, it's not by much. I recently bought a Black & Decker table saw, which I don't think the model has been out too long here in the UK, and unfortunately it came and it was damaged on the corner, so I took it back. But before I took it back, I checked to see if the blade was square out of the box, and it wasn't square at all, so that was disappointing. So on the left side of the table, it doesn't seem to be perfectly square, but I actually think that's because of the table, not the blade. It seems very slightly out on the left side, but on the right side, which is the side that matters most to me, that's where I'll be doing most of my cutting anyway, it does seem to be square. So yeah, it's pretty much square. I just mentioned about changing the blade, so it's really easy to change the blade on this. You just take the insert plate out, put your two spanners down here on the one side. Just firstly tilt this to the 45 degrees, so it's sort of open on the side so you can get better access to it, and it's really easy to do, and to add the riving knife as well. It's not a problem at all. So to summarise all the features of this saw, it has a sliding fence that locks at both ends. It has a sliding support table that extends. It tilts to 45 degrees, the blade. The mitre gauge goes to 60 degrees, so you can use the mitre gauge for cuts 0 to 60 degrees. The blade you can tilt to 45 degrees, and it has a push stick here, built-in carry handle on the side, and that's pretty much it for the main features. If there's anything I've missed out, please let me know in the comments below, or if there's anything you'd like to see, and please let me know your experiences with this saw. If there's anything you've done to improve it, any good or bad experiences you've had with it, please let me know down below. So I thought I'd start off with some quite thick pallet wood skids. I need these for a project that I'm doing this week. So the first thing I noticed was how it blows the sawdust away from the machine out the back, and I thought that was very good, especially if you don't have dust extraction. The power of the machine is fine. It cut through this wood with ease. Here's a better view of how the chips are blasted out of the back. And I didn't notice any wood catching on the riving knife, so everything was nicely in line. And then I used it to just trim off some edges, just neaten up some edges. And you can see it throws out quite a bit of dust if you just edge it, but it's not too bad usually. So the cuts were fairly good, and it is only a rough blade, like a ripping blade, so you can always put a finer blade on here. I then used the accessory which allows you to get smaller pieces of wood cut, and that just allows you to get your push stick in the gap between the blade and the fence. This just bolted on with 2 bolts, and here I just double checked that it was in line. So here I want to rip down some pallet wood and make some thin beading. Again, the saw had no problem cutting through this, and it was about 20mm thick. So then I tested out the Mitre Gauge. I didn't need to make any 45-degree cuts here, but I thought it would be a good idea to give it a test. So here I'm just setting it to 45 degrees, and I have a pine bed slat that I'm going to use for the test. So I took my speed square and just made a mark for a 45-degree line to follow. The cut looked good, and checking it with the speed square, it seemed very accurate. So just after one session, there's quite a bit of sawdust, and you can see there where the little guide is. That was covered with sawdust, but it's not a problem. It was easy enough to clean. Again, something you need to think about if you don't have dust extraction. And it has a handy little place to store the Mitre Gauge. So picking it up and moving it is really easy. It's quite lightweight. So that is about it for the review and the testing. My final thoughts on this machine: I think it's very good, considering that it was only £128 and it has plenty of features for that price. It's lightweight and compact, so if you're a casual DIYer like myself, I think it's ideal. It's easy to pick up and put away and get back out again on the weekends or whenever you're free. And it has plenty of features. It's got the fence locks on both ends, and it's quite rigid. You do have to kind of check it over with a combination square or a tape measure, but that's kind of expected for this price point. The blade that comes with it, it seems to cut softwood just fine, and the motor seems to have plenty of power. I haven't done any hardwoods with it yet, but I'm pretty sure it'll be fine, just keeping the blade low. It doesn't seem to have any kind of problems for me, apart from sort of accuracy, which you'd expect for a saw of this price range. It struggles a bit with accuracy on the fence, getting everything lined up straight, but then again, it's a very cheap saw. So with that being said, I can't really fault it. I think it looks good and it's packed with features, so I am happy I bought it. And I haven't used it too much yet, but going forward, I'm pretty sure that it's going to do the job for me just fine. I don't make any kind of high-end furniture or anything like that, so the accuracy for me I can kind of live with, and I'll just make sure to check everything before I make cuts. So if you found this video useful, please remember to like and also consider subscribing for more DIY related videos. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.